meet academic goals and fulfill its fiduciary responsibilities. On that score, I have waiting in the wings my colleague Jim Pinkard in case there are any questions about the financial paragraphs that you would see in these 2 pages. As a reminder, statute requires the evaluation must include a report of the university's achievement of outcomes, measures of progress, goals and targets, an assessment of the university's progress toward achieving the statewide mission for post-secondary education as described in statute, and an assessment of how well the establishment of a governing board at the university comports with the findings set forth in other statutes, ORS 352.025. And this year, the evaluations are for 3 institutions: Oregon State, the University of Oregon, and Portland State University. These reevaluations rely on a combination of institutional accreditation reports, self-assessment, and HECC-developed criteria. They focus on key areas of interest that the Commission supports in terms of meeting the state's statewide education goals, and these include student success measured by retention, graduation rates, and degree completion, access and affordability evaluated through equity in student outcomes and financial aid impact, academic quality and research highlighting faculty excellence, student-faculty engagement, and institutional research capacity, financial sustainability examining each institution's ability to manage expenses, revenue streams, and strategic investments, institutional collaboration, including partnerships that enhance educational pathways and workforce alignment, and governance and accountability, ensuring compliance with statutory responsibilities for institutional boards of trustees. So today's material just include a summary, and we derive from a combination of HECC data, institutional self-reports, aligned with the major evaluative categories. Institutional leaders have reviewed the summaries, and staff have incorporated their feedback as appropriate. Based on the Commission feedback, we will prepare a comprehensive evaluation for each of these institutions for your final consideration at an upcoming HECC meeting, at Commission meeting, I should say. And so you have these 2-page summaries for the 3 institutions. And today it's an informational item for discussion only, and I am happy to take your questions, your observations as seem appropriate to you.
And before we get started on the questions, I just wanted to note, and Jim or Veronica, correct me if you need to. These summaries came about because the final reports cover these areas, but in so much more detail and with a lot of formulas. And so I asked for these reports so we had an idea of what was happening. So this is the first time you've seen it in this form. So it is entirely appropriate if we have suggestions on what can be more useful to us when it comes in this form, when they're handling in the future. So think about that as you have reviewed them also. So is this helpful to have it summarized? And if so, how could it be more helpful? Is that correct? Is my memory correct on that, Jim or Veronica?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. And so let's see how useful it is. Commissioners, questions or observations about it? Commissioner Devlin.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I do believe it's helpful in the sense that I've obviously seen the long reports before, and I'd like to still see the long reports, but it gives me a pretty clear indication, particularly relative to these 3 largest institutions that we have, about some of these factors, particularly the underlying financial stability, which leads me to believe from what's being reported here, stability, depending upon future state appropriations, for U of O and OSU is pretty clear that they could remain stable. I think PSU still has some issues that need to be addressed. And I mean, being able to get that up to date is very helpful at this point.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do a bit, because these are the topics we have declared most important, especially some of them like student access and student success, because they're numbers internally. They're very helpful, and we can see the trajectory over time because of the way you've done it for a little bit, and also compare them with each other. I think in the future on this, though, if you can, where you give a percentage, give a number. For instance, even on some of them, I can't remember which one, maybe it was on Oregon State, the total number of enrollment isn't there. And it may be, even though we want a summary report, that something like that is easier to put in a small table in that section, without having to have everybody's there. And I know we have that in our material in a different packet, but that's one thing to consider. This doesn't have to be just a narrative. If numbers are better, then give the numbers in either line form or in a table that's useful. My other comment or it's really a concern. It's on collaboration and shared administrative services. This is an area I think we are pushing, we have led in, and we're going to continue to want to see a lot more progress. And in this report, it's impossible for me to see if there has been progress in either of those areas. Also, I couldn't tell the level of enthusiasm or cooperation on either the collaboration or the shared administrative services that we are seeing in these colleges, and how it compares to each other. And their accolades thrown into here for what they are doing. And I'm not sure, I shouldn't say thrown in, but it includes some praise for them, which made me wonder if that was written by them. So I would say less commentary and more evaluative from your expertise and what you are seeing and what we experience. This is really an area of future emphasis for us. And if we have universities that are, as we did, I might say, in the transfer, if we have universities who are essentially slowing down the work or who are not enthusiastic, we need to explore why, and we need to see what we need to do to get their enthusiasm. So I also don't have a sense in either of these categories how much is possible. How much coordination more could they be doing? And again, that might be something you already know. But so I want to see for the commissioners the amount of opportunity there is, how much is being done, and to what effect and with what level of enthusiasm, shall we say.
Thank you for that feedback, Commissioner Rowe. And it is an area that HECC staff, along with my colleague, Jim Pinkett, we have been reviewing these statements, and we are aware that perhaps there is more opportunity for greater collaboration or greater use of the shared services. I will allow both Ben and perhaps Jim to make some comments, but the institutions to some extent continue to be in that space. But we take your feedback seriously about an interest in understanding the level of enthusiasm and exploring opportunities for improvement if they will bring about the kinds of outcomes the commission would be interested in.
Okay, good, because there are several points where it says they strategically cooperate, and it had me circling strategically every time I saw it. What does that mean? When the hell they want to? Anyway, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. I also noticed that every governance board was doing a bang up job, and so I'm in hope they are. I hope that's true. But yeah, I just, as a little background for me, these full reports that are that these are summaries of go to the legislature. Is that ultimately? And then do they use them then as reference documents just to kind of like just have a broad understanding of the state of the institutions, or do they enact, I mean, with, for instance, with the example of PSU, does that then bolster, PSU's, claim that, hey, we need more money, or like, do they act upon them in any way to your knowledge, or are they just purely informational for the legislature?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Smith. When these evaluations were originally imagined or structured, the state had an interest in understanding how the institutions were doing against statewide goals and expectations in the period following the dissolution of the Oregon University system. So that was the intent. The content has evolved as commission members of you have given feedback about what would be useful to you. There have been some conversations with the institutions about how could they be made more valuable to the institutions. So part of the feedback we heard was that the accreditation that they go through is very thorough. And of course, the commission needed to know institutions continue to be accredited, but we would not be asking for additional reports. So it is from the perspective of the commission to actually identify the areas the commission is particularly interested in and hoping to highlight and have conversations to signal to the institutions how they're meeting or perhaps not meeting, or what opportunities they have to actually deliver on the statewide goals. I cannot comment. I do not know to what extent legislators actually dig into these reports, and maybe among you, there might be some of you who know more than I do to actually make decisions or have it affect the policy directions they might want to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Heyman, did you have a question or comment? Oh, thought I saw you lit for a minute. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you for this. We're not trying to add work, and it has been helpful, I think, to see this earlier. And I think we'll have fewer questions on the full report, but we appreciate this. And if for some reason it's too much of a headache, please come back and tell us.
Thank you, Commissioner Rue. We appreciate the feedback.
And so that's a report for our information, as Veronica said, so we do not have to vote on that. And I believe, Guthrie, any reason we can't adjourn for lunch?
We can certainly recess for lunch now, Chair.
Okay, I said adjourn, I meant recess. Okay, we are recessed for lunch. We'll return at 1 p.m. Thank you. Go build a snowman. Guthrie, how we doing?
Doing well, Madam Chair. Just waiting for a few folks to join it, looks like.
Okay.
It appears we do have a quorum back online, so we're good to proceed whenever you are.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back. Did anybody go outside? Shovel snow? Make snowballs? Nothing? Ah, Gail did the one with 4 feet of snow. What did you do, Gail?
I shoveled my driveway because the plow came in, and they leave a huge berm, so you've got to push that out there so you don't have glaciers at the bottom of your driveway.
Okay, my goodness. Well, congratulations. You have more energy than the rest of us.
Thank you.
I did go feed my chickens, but that's about it.
Oh, and how are the chickens?
Yeah, my backyard chickens, I have 5 of them, and they needed some food to,
How
stay
are they
warm.
doing? How are they doing?
Oh, they're good. They're all in their little coop out there.
Oh, cute. Okay. We are back, and Greg, I believe you are up for the report from the Funding and Achievement Subcommittee.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rowe. Just a quick report on the work of the Funding and Achievement Subcommittee. We met yesterday, and I want to report on 3 items from that agenda, 2 of which are recommendations for you as a full commission to approve. The first is a capital construction report, which was presented to us by Jim Pinkard, and just to clarify, this is not a report on capital construction projects for which anyone is asking for money. It is a report on the status of existing capital construction reports, and it's quite a long list because it extends back into projects that were approved as far back as 2019. I think it was a good conversation, both about the kinds of projects that get approved, and I think also just some understanding of sort of what is it that leads to projects to not get completed within a year of when they're approved, and certainly different funding strategies and access to resources play a role in that. So we did, as a subcommittee, receive that report, accept that report, and we forward it to the full commission for your approval with our recommendation that you do so. The second item was public university tuition setting and affordability. Again, this was a primer on how that process works and our role in that process as a commission. And just to clarify, state law limits the annual increase of tuition for the universities to a maximum of 5%, except in those cases where the commission would, under certain circumstances, support or approve an increase greater than that. Our role in that comes at the end of that process should an institution put forward an increase greater than 5%. And so this simply laid out the timeline for that work as it's required in statute. And I think we had a good conversation around that. We're, again, especially interested in how do we make sure that that the cost of education isn't a significant impediment to a student's participation and access to that. And so I think today's conversation around financial aid was especially, I think, applicable to that dialogue as well. That was not an action item, so it's simply reporting that that was a good discussion. Third item is a permanent rule amendment in Chapter 589. This is related to community college funding distribution for applied baccalaureate programs. This is a change in the administrative rule in response to legislation that was passed in the last session, which extends state funding through the Community College Support Fund to baccalaureate, applied baccalaureates and BSNs that are offered by community colleges. And so this is a revision of our rules in response to that change in state statute. And again, we reviewed that and we approved it and forwarded it to you as a full commission for your approval as well. Any questions? Yes, Gail.
Yes.
Well, so just a couple of things on the capital construction projects. I can't remember if there was, I know when they were, awarded funding, but the completion dates, when they have not been on schedule for completion, was there any place in that document that sort of stated why that was?
There,
be helpful to know.
Yeah, there was not. You're certainly, Commissioner Yamasaki, familiar with some of the reasons that those projects don't proceed as planned. I have noticed here that Jim Pinkert has joined the conversation. Perhaps he can provide a more informed response to your question.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Heyman. And for the record, Jim Pinkert with the Office of Post-Secondary Finance and Capital, and a preview of the next item on your agenda as we ask for your support and while taking action considering the report. But the specific answer is no. In the report, we do not reference, explain, or otherwise detail why projects weren't completed in a timely fashion. Typically, once the bonds are sold, there's a 6-year period for spending authority. There has been in the past, on occasion, rare though it has been, that some projects go beyond that, and they have to go back to the state legislature to ask for a reauthorization at that point. But as Chair Heyman noted, these are large capital construction projects, and so some of them are $100+ million. One project in particular, recently completed, was just under $200 million. And so when you have large construction projects like that, the weather can play a role. Supply chain challenges can play a role. There was a time during the pandemic where the lead time to order HVAC equipment was running 8-9 months, as an example. So, but this report does not address that. And if there were specific questions for why specific projects were taking longer, I'd have to rely on our partners at the institutions to provide a fuller understanding of that. So,
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Just one other question regarding the tuition and fees. As I recall in the past, I think that we were curious about, recognizing that there is a ceiling on how much the tuition can increase year to year. But what was the, comparison the last 5 years? Where were we with tuition and where were we now? So incrementally, if I were going to school for 4 to 6 years, my tuition really has gone up quite a bit than when I started, probably as a freshman. And I think in the past we've talked about seeing that kind of comparison. Am I wrong about that?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I do have perhaps 2 pieces of response. We certainly earlier today in the discussion of impact of the Oregon Opportunity Grant, there was a graph that showed in aggregate the changes in tuition over the last decade. So we do have some reference to that. The community colleges do use a model that attempts to show the relationship between tuition and state support. I think if that was the question you were asking, but it's not. It's simply an informative document that the community colleges use in sharing their needs to the commission as a whole.
Okay, well, thanks, Greg. I guess it just occurs to me that if tuition increases every 2 years or every year, if I start as a freshman, by the time I graduate, my tuition really has gone up a lot. I'm thinking now, that's just anecdotal, but it seems to me that when I started and where I finished in terms of the tuition, there's a huge difference in my cost of attendance.
That's correct.
Yeah, and it would just be good to really get a sense of what that looks like. I know in the Oregon Opportunity Grant slide, it talked about the differential, but I'm guessing that between the universities and the community colleges, you know, there've been different.
There are charts in this packet. Jim,
Yeah.
where are they?
Okay.
What
Are they
items
there?
are they? There are charts that show it longitudinally since for the last decade. Jim,
There are, Madam Chair. Yesterday for the Funding and Achievement Subcommittee meeting, docket item 4.0B does have the longitudinal data that Chair Rowe is referencing. I'll quickly summarize in saying that over the last decade, for our public universities by themselves, so excluding the community colleges, the tuition fee amount that first-time freshmen are paying has risen 45% over the past decade. In total, that averages to roughly 4.2% per year, give or take. But the amount students actually pay, and this is the connection to student affordability, the amount students actually pay after, considering the full cost of attending college with room and board and transportation costs and everything else, minus financial aid and everything else, that amount has increased 22% in the last decade, for an average of roughly 2.2% per year. So to give you some context.
And I think it's very important for all of us to be familiar with these over time. For Jim knows that every year or a couple of times a year, I might ask for them to be refreshed, or where are they, Jim? Because it's just in terms of us representing students and their families, it's so important. So Jim, if you don't mind, since everyone doesn't go through all the F&A material, pull them out and send them in a separate packet today or tomorrow to all commissioners so you can review those again.
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Devlin?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't necessarily want to repeat all of our discussion from yesterday, but I do think that there is an issue in using averages because averages are just that. There are people that are having different experiences. Obviously, if you do not have a Pell Grant or an opportunity grant, or those tuition increases are actually as high as they actually are. There is no really offset from student aid for those students. And also, I think too that I remember correctly, our 5% approval above that only applies to tuition and does not apply to fees, and obviously does not apply to some of the other services that universities provide, like housing and food and things like that. Finally, the only thing I'd state is that one of the somewhat, to me, interesting factors of this is it's a 5% overall. And so as some of the institutions have adopted guaranteed tuition, they would be permitted to put higher than 5% increases on freshmen, because averaging out over all the students, it would be less than 5%. There have not really been very many overt cases of that happening, but in theory, they could avoid coming to us and put in a significant increase for freshmen, those that have guaranteed tuition, and still be under the 5% because it would be based on the overall increases for all students, undergraduate students. resident.
And Jim, oh, excuse me. Thank you very much, Commissioner Devlin. And Jim, since you are sending out a separate packet, if there are any caveats or context you want to add as bullet items for the top for everyone, Commissioner Devlin's comments remind us there might be a few to help it be more understandable.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hayman, anything else from you on this?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Then we will, any other questions for Commissioner Hayman? Or for Jim? Okay, we will move on then for the action item, which is the acceptance of the capital construction report. Again, that the subcommittee yesterday approved and recommended for you. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, indicate by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. I'm wondering if we should move up. I realize it's in a different section, but while you're here, Jim, whoops, and Jim disappears. There he is. He's here. He's gone. If we should move up the rule change on the community college funding programs. Greg's saying yes. Good. Okay, we're going to move that up before we do the prison education program presentation. So that's item 12.1. Anything else you need to say about that, Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, in 45 seconds or less, I'll say that to piggyback off what Vice Chair Hayman said, on page 3 of the docket item, you'll note we attempted to calculate the estimated impact. So this adds applied baccalaureate degree programs and Bachelor of Science nursing degree programs are now eligible for distribution through the Community College Support Fund. So in our analysis, based on current funding levels, it moves around about $1.5 million ultimately over the next few years, which is about 0.4% of the total funding of the CCSF, with an estimate next year by itself in fiscal year 2026 of moving around approximately $230,000. So that's our best understanding of the financial impact to the colleges of this change.
And note that Jim said it's a movement. It's not overall additional money, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Questions about that? Okay, move to approve, please.
I move to approve that.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thanks. Any questions or concerns lingering? Okay. All in favor of approval indicate by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Now we are going to back up to the prison education presentation. And I think Donna Llewellyn is here for that.
Hi again, Chair Rowe. Donna is not able to be with us today,
okay.
so I'm going to jump in for her, and I'm going to check
Perfect.
and
Thank you,
see
Shelley.
if Tracy is here. Sorry, I have things covering up windows. Tracy Hightower from the Department of Corrections is joining me for this presentation, and I don't see her yet.
I'm here, Shelley.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, can't see everyone. Okay, well, great. Let me share my screen. That showing up in a way that makes sense? Okay, great. So as noted, Chair Rowe, Vice Chair Hayman, and members of the commission, for the record, my name is Shally Hodson, and I am Policy Advisor in the Office of Community Colleges and Workforce Development. And Donna sends her regrets that she can't be here today, but I've been working with Donna and Tracy in this work for a while now, and I'm happy to be able to share some information. Tracy, I'll let you introduce yourself and then we can jump in.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Tracy Hightower. I'm the Education and Training Administrator for the Department of Corrections.
Okay, so today we have a pretty big overview of what's been happening in this space over the past several years. We've had some key legislation that has supported the partnership between HECC and Department of Corrections. We have a lot going on in the education for adults in custody space, lots of sort of different types of education happening there that we'll share. And then Tracy will also give us a great update on the work to implement WorkSource Oregon centers in the prisons. And finally, we'll wrap it up by talking about sort of the ongoing work and partnership between the agencies and with the education institutions and other partners. So the legislation that has guided this work over the past several years has been Senate Bill 234 in 2021. And that bill asked the HECC to convene a group of folks that were passionate about this work to really think about what does it mean to support adults in custody who were becoming or were recently eligible for Pell Grants and education grants and assistance. And that work group included Vice Chair Heyman. So thank you for your service there. And they came up with a number of recommendations in 3 kind of broad buckets. And all of these recommendations were really centered around expanding offerings, expanding technology access, thinking about statutes and rules that might need to be adjusted or changed to support this work, and aligning across education providers, aligning across agencies. And so just a lot of digging in on what needs to happen to support this work as it moves forward. And so then in 2023, we had Senate Bill 269, and this was really championed by Senator Dembro. And that bill basically, not directed, but supported the agencies, maybe directed is the right word, but supported the agencies to strengthen and sort of codify the relationship and the collaboration that had been happening for the past several years into a memorandum of understanding between corrections and HECC. And so that group brought together an advisory committee. Some of the members were the same as those who served on the Senate Bill 234 work group. And they focused on what does an MOU look like between these agencies that focuses on improving data sharing, providing clarity and transparency on education programs that are offered to adults in custody, developing a distance learning policy that supports the expansion that's happening with the technology that is in place through WorkSource Oregon and other opportunities for distance education, and developing sort of the method and the supports for adults in custody to apply for federal financial aid. And that work group had a lot of really robust conversations about what was required as part of the MOU, but also what may have been out of scope for the MOU, but was still really vital and necessary. And so in addition to the MOU, which is almost complete, it is working its way through our procurement office as we speak, the work group developed a work plan, or the advisory committee developed a work plan. And so the work plan really digs into some of the details on what's in the MOU, but also some things that maybe were out of scope of the MOU and needed further conversation, and sort of continuing to work through the details on how to make this work better for those students and for the education providers and everyone who supports this work. And so in addition to the MOU, it has an appendix that includes this more detailed work plan that covers these things that are somewhat similar to the list in the MOU. So this work has been going on for a number of years. This isn't new work. I think the partnership has been strengthened certainly over the last 5 years. Between the agencies, we do a lot of work together. One of the things that the agencies have been working on together for a very long time is education for adult basic skills. And this is a place where we collaborate together as agencies, but also with the education providers that are listed here to ensure that adult basic skills, GED, ESOL is available in these institutions. And we also have some data, and this data is not perfect. And Tracy will talk more about the imperfections of this data, but these are the approximate number of students served in the adult basic skills programs in the last biennium. And there are some issues with duplication and a lot of opportunity to improve this data, but this gives you a snapshot of the number of people served at different institutions across the state. And I apologize for the multiple acronyms. I myself am learning the acronyms, and so we can provide the full list of what those mean if that's helpful. And so now I would love to turn it over to Tracy to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the other education programming and some of the future of this work.
So good afternoon. Some of the things that we're working on are the Pell Grant is the biggest one currently with our colleges. We have two community colleges that were brought in as a second chance Pell Grant. Chemeketa was the original group, the very first group that they did for second chance Pell. And they've been operating at OSP, which is Oregon State Penitentiary, OSCI, which is our Oregon State Correctional Institute, and an SCI, which is Santiam Correctional Institute. And so they've been operating, I think, since 2014 or 15 with the second chance Pell. Treasure Valley came on board 2 years ago with the second chance Pell. They were one of the last folks to apply for the second chance Pell. And they started about 2 years ago using that. And they're at only for Snake River. So the new Pell Grant basically has 3 parts. So everybody has to apply, even our second chance Pell Grant facilities or colleges have to apply. Currently, we have 2. We have Central Oregon Community Colleges who's made it all the way through the process. So they are now offering the new Pell Grant, the new full Pell Grant, and Portland State University. Central Oregon was like the 4th in the nation to get approved by the federal government. So there's a 3-part application process. They have to apply through the Department of Corrections. So we had to basically come up with an application process. We had to build an advisory committee, which we basically tagged on to the Senate Bill 269 advisory committee. We felt that that group was already together. So we thought that that was the best place to have our advisory committee for this also. So they look at our applications that come in for the Department of Corrections, telling us that this particular university or college would like to be a Pell Grant partner with us. And they score with a rubric those particular applications. And then we find out whether or not they've passed through that process or not. So far, everybody has. We work with them to make sure that they answer the application fully before they ever turn it in. We currently have basically all of our community colleges and universities that we work with, including Eastern Oregon University, who has just stepped forward, has made it through our process. The rest of them, so Chemeketa, Treasure Valley, Eastern Oregon, and missing one, my brain went blank, are all in the second stage. So they are with the accreditors. So the second step is going through the accreditation process. So they have to apply again with their accreditor and get permission for that. That usually takes 6 to 8 months for them to make it through that particular process. Once they get through that, they then have to apply with the U.S. Department of Education. They didn't make it easy for any of us to do this. And that process can take up to a year sometimes, because if you think about it, every single college or university that wants to go through this process with a Department of Corrections has to go through this process. That's a lot of applications going through one place. So it can take a long time. And so that's where we're at with those. We also have apprenticeship programs within our facilities. This is just a graph of where we have those what apprenticeships we do offer and how many students. And the reason why our student numbers are so low for apprenticeships is because for most apprenticeships, it's a one-on-one program. And for some, it's 1 and 2. So basically one instructor can meet with one student or have one student working with them at a time through an apprenticeship. And again, for some, it's 2. So where we have the staff and we have more staff for those particular ones, then you see 4s and 6s and 8s. Where we have a few, then you'll only see 1 or 2. And so this is the actual number of students that we have in college. Again, these are duplicative numbers because we are basically on a green screen system, and college was not included in our system. So we are having to code it in a way that says that these are college classes, but we don't have a way to separate it out. So say at OSP, where we have Chemeketa, U of O, and Portland State University all teaching classes, a student can be taking classes from all 3. And so they're counted 3 times at that particular facility. And we don't have a way to change that at this point. We're hoping to get an upgrade on our system, but that's still 4 or 5 years off. One of the things we are working with HECC and having those discussions with our Senate Bill 269 committee is how can we do this? Would HECC be able to help us with this with these numbers better than what we're able to do at DOC? And so we are having those conversations to see what we can do to be able to gather data better for us. I do have the number of classes last year that we taught from each college for each facility. If you would like that, I can have that sent to you. But we do have the total number of classes that were offered last year. We do have that ability. And these are just all the schools that we're working with, the 4 on that page, and then the universities are here. So we work with Lewis and Clark, Portland State, University of Oregon, and Corbin. And then Eastern Oregon University is coming on board. So with WorkSource, this started, I want to say almost 4 years ago, we started the discussions. We were writing a BJA grant, a Bureau of Justice Administration grant, to do a heavy equipment operation program. And they wanted to know, part of the grant was, how are you going to help these students get jobs? And so we started talking to our WorkSource Oregon partners, and we decided to pilot with them at 2 facilities through that grant. And it was such a success that they turned around and wrote another grant to have WorkSource in every one of our facilities. So we currently have a WorkSource partner with a computer lab at all of our facilities except for 2. OSP, we're still working on. There's not very much space at OSP, so we're working on remodeling a staff lounge, basically, to become a computer lab for us. And that's taking longer than what we thought. And at South Fork Forest Camp, there's not a whole lot of space there either. And so we're converting an old staff lounge to become a computer lab. So again, there it is taking a lot longer than what we thought it would. But you see the partnerships on the screens that we have. And again, we've implemented it at every facility except for 2 now. So our work sources are in our facilities. So these are our numbers with Deer Ridge and Warner Creek. Those were the 2 that we piloted through the heavy equipment grant. And these are just the numbers. We had 332 participants. We had 277 that were released. We have 138 that actually went to the WorkSource and are continuing as active participants in that program. And then again, the number, we don't know if that's an accurate number, but what we have, because again, it's hard for us to track, is we know we have 107 that have gained employment through that particular training.
Thanks, Tracy. As you can see, there's a lot happening, a lot going on. I think what I've noticed in my work in the last year in this space is the strength of this partnership between the agencies. And so as we continue to work on implementing the recommendations of Senate Bill 234 and start implementing the MOU of Senate Bill 269, there's great momentum and great interest in the work. We have a really actively engaged Senate Bill 269 Advisory Committee, and certainly committed leadership from both agencies. And as we continue to do the work of implementing that MOU and those recommendations, we're also supporting the WorkSource Oregon program and helping to think about how those computer labs could be used for education and how we could leverage that work as that's fully implemented. There's going to be work to continue advocating for policy changes as needed, both in statute and rule, between the agencies. And so I think this work has a really good future trajectory. There are certainly some capacity issues and staffing is challenging, but there's a lot of commitment to the work, and it's very exciting to see the expansion. And with that, we are happy to take questions.
Chair Rowe, you're muted.
I am sorry. Commissioner Middleton.
Thank you. On one of the slides, it said that the recidivism rate was 1.43% among those who are attending college, and in Oregon, the recidivism rate is more like 40%. How accurate do you think those numbers are, Tracy and Shaylee? And I want to thank you both for this report.
Again, they're not accurate, but that is a close number. From what we can follow, those are the numbers that we're finding.
And I think it's important, Commissioner Middleton, to understand that those are different timeframes, and the services, the WorkSource services is what's being measured there. Some of those folks could also have participated in education. There's a lot of factors happening in that comparison, but it is a starkly different outcome, certainly.
Yeah, and not everybody has been followed. So that's the other piece. We have laws that the Department of Corrections are not allowed to follow our folks when they leave. And so we have to partner with HECC, and we have to partner with WorkSource, and we have to partner with other agencies, including the Employment Department, to get our numbers. And so it can be a modeled mess sometimes for us to get some accuracy, but from what we do know, those are accurate numbers.
I appreciate your candor in response to my question, and appreciate the complexity in following those folks and in the complications. We see that in higher education a lot, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you, Chair Rowe. I thought this was a really exciting report. I'm happy to see that this is happening in Oregon. And it ironically came right after I listened to an interview from a former person of incarceration in California with their firefighting program. That sounds really amazing, and also same types of results. And so that would be another one for us to look into. It sounds like it is a very viable career option.
Commissioner Martinez, we do have firefighting. That's what our South Fork Forest Camp is firefighters. That's what they do. We also have firefighters through our female facility at Coffee Creek and a couple of our facilities on the east side as well. So we already have those. Our folks already fight fires on a regular basis.
And commissioners, for those of you who might be interested, I assume we saw it of the same thing on Jon Stewart and The Daily Show. I think a week ago Monday, and Stewart, as you may know, has always been a huge supporter of firefighters and police and was the champion of the 9/11 veterans in terms of the first responders. Anyway, he had this delightful former incarcerated person on who's a big deal in firefighting now. And John's always over the top in his descriptions. So it wasn't just informative, it was really fun. And you're cheering this guy on while you're sitting on your couch watching it. So Teresa, if you have the link, you can send it. If not, look for John Stewart. It would have been last Monday, I believe.
I was listening to the podcast version.
Oh, okay. So there's a podcast too, but very worthwhile. Commissioner Heyman.
Thank you, Chair Rohr, and Tracy and Shirley, thank you very much for your presentation. As you know, I've kind of watched this for a long time now, and this report really gives me the sense that we're making progress. It always feels like it's not fast enough, but it feels like things are happening. I did have a couple questions. One is, I was, 2 months ago, was at the Snake River facility and saw a couple of the programs, quite impressive, but it seemed to have a whole lot more adult inmates involved than your numbers represented. It may be that you were just looking at apprenticeships, but there are other students involved in the actual shop itself, and it was kind of it was inspiring to see what was going on there, so I wanted to commend you on that. I think there's some great work happening specifically at that facility. Now I had a question. Do you have, the numbers on AEOT and transfer degrees are, early. We're not far along in that program. That's the one I'm most interested in. Do you have any sense, in some of our other educational areas, we try to get a sense of what percentage, like how many high school graduates actually go to college? In a comparable question is, do you have any sense of how many AICs would be eligible for post-secondary education, and how many of those were reaching and not reaching?
So our last numbers that I looked at, 69% of our adults in custody either have a high school diploma or a GED.
Yeah.
And so a lot. And we, you see the few numbers. We have 12,000, right around 12,000 adults in custody currently, and you saw our numbers. They're duplicative. We went from 68 in like 2000, I think they did 19, to today we have 900. Those are both duplicative numbers. You can see the jump in what we're doing, but we have a ways to go. We have several facilities. We're not able to offer college classes very much because I don't have education staff. I don't have staff at the facility. So we have to beg the facility to have a staff that already has their full-time job take on extra duties to try and do college. And we have some that have done that, but we can't expand at those facilities until I get staff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you for that question, Commissioner Heyman. Any other questions on this? This is a pathways education for us that we requested, actually led by Commissioner Heyman, so thank you. So if you have any other questions about it, now's the time. Thank you both very much. This is very helpful.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, let's see. We are going to recess into executive session. I'm required to, I'm just going to read it to make sure we follow the law precisely, that we will now recess this public meeting to meet an executive session pursuant to Oregon 192.660 sub 2I, which allows the commission to convene an executive session to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer. Representatives of the news media and designated staff can attend. If you're in the news media and want to attend, we would ask you to text Guthrie at 273-9222 so he can let you in. And of course, if you're a member of the news media, you may attend this, but you may not disclose, report on, or disclose any of the deliberations or anything said during the executive session, except for the general subject matter that we are here to evaluate the executive director. At the end of the session, we don't take any action or take any votes in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will come back to the general session if we need to report, but we will come back anyway and to adjourn the meeting. So since several of the commissioners needed to leave at midday at lunchtime, commissioners who are going into executive session, please make sure you come back to the full meeting so we still have a quorum and can adjourn the full meeting. And Guthrie, we need Susie to come to the meeting. Who else comes?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will just note, should we move up our return time to 2:30, given that we're running 15 minutes ahead?
Sure.
Okay. I will note that in the...
But we might not, I think we'll probably come back before 2:30, but I don't know. Do we have to say a time, Guthrie, or can we say we'll come back when we finish?
We should say a definite time so that public members can know when the meeting will resume.
Well, let's say we're going to come back at 2:20, and if they have to wait a few minutes, we'll come back after that. So we won't short our discussion, but we will come back when we're finished.
Sounds good, Madam Chair. I've noted that in the chat. Just a moment, Commissioner Devlin. I'll note logistically, we'll now recess this meeting. Commissioners have been sent a separate Teams link. We'll ask you to leave this meeting, join that Teams link. Director Cannon, myself, and Susie Hosey will join that as well, but other staff will not. And if any members of the news media would like to text me, my number is in the chat. Did you have a question, Commissioner Devlin?
You just answered it.
Okay.
Okay, so Ben is texted or... And I guess we should stay on this meeting if you're going and just turn off your camera and mic.
That can work.
Will that work?
Yes.
Okay, let's try it.
So where is everybody?
Well, I think can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think we really needed to sign out of the other meeting.
Oh, did we? Okay, I'm gonna
I'm
sign
not
out.
sure. I'm not sure about that because I mean, I find out.
You don't have to, so you can go to the link and it'll just put this one on hold.
I
Right,
know,
so
but on my phone with one app, I think it's not necessarily working. So I
Oh.
just out, so I'll have to sign back in. I already did that, so I'm back in. I'm now in this meeting then.
Oh, okay.
Stafford, if you're there, I'm sorry, Guthrie, I'm just reading your name there.
Yes,
Could you tell me about agenda item 11.2? That was to be led by Veronica, but did I miss that was?
that was from a previous version of the agenda. That was
Okay.
not being ready for this meeting.
Okay, I printed it out a little while ago, so thank you.
Guthrie, perhaps Chair Rowe is having trouble rejoining the meeting. Do you want to?
Let me give her a call. Vice Chair, the chair has asked whether you'd be willing to close out the meeting or
Sure.
difficulties getting her back on.
Well, it's a heavy load here, so we will call the meeting back into the public, leaving the executive session. I am reporting that no official action was taken during the executive session, but the chair, Rowe, wishes to communicate that a summary letter from the commission will be developed and will be presented at the April commission meeting. I think that's as much as I have to say. Anything else from the rest of you? Then I believe this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, all of you, for the time together, and I guess I'll see you in a couple months.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.